So we're looking at the Tosafos in Hamid Bays. The big Tosafos there, Afilo Miyasmi. It's a lengthy Tosafos, as you can see, and it's a bit of a pilpul. And the truth is, I went through it twice today, and we're still gonna have to work through this, even on round 3. You don't have the whole entire flow mamish clear in my head, but this is the 3rd time I think I should be able to do it. Okay, so the Gemara is discussing Machlokes Reish Lakish and Abaye and Rava about whether or not someone is nemon to say, or rephrase that, whether there's a chazaka that a person does not pay teres mane, and if he says peraticha teres mane is einye nemon. Reish Lakish says chazaka that a person does not pay because halavai she part of his mane, halavai, and Abaye and Rava says zimnin misram luzuzi, and Amar he says let me go pay off. So I shouldn't get harassed. Okay. So the Gemara then concluded that the halacha follows Reish Lakish, that a person does not pay early. That's the chazaka. And then there's a kind of parentheses, which is this line that says "Afilu miyasmi." So let's look at that line in the Gemara. The Hilchos Reish Lakish, the second line from the water set of lines in Hamid Bays, and just read that parentheses and the Rashi, and then we'll go to Tosafos. So the Gemara says Hilchos Reish Lakish, halachas Reish Lakish, and that it's a chazaka, a person does not pay early. Vafilu miyasmi, even if he's coming to collect money from orphans. So what does that mean? Says Rashi, Vafilu miyasmi, and meis haloiva, if the borrower dies b'seich mane, before it's time to pay, goiva chayv mane yisomim, he can collect the debt from the yisomim below shvur without taking a vow. And we don't say maybe he paid. In other words, like this. One could assume that even though generally speaking a person doesn't pay early, if the guy knows he's coming to the end of his life, so he doesn't want to leave his children with debt, he'll pay up quickly. So you might think that chazaka doesn't apply there, and maybe the person did pay early. And therefore, if he's going to come to collect money from the yisomim, he's going to have to go to the yisomim and take a shvur that he never got paid. That's generally the halacha. If it's after Zman, if it's after the Zman is up and he wants to collect from the Yisomim, he has to take a shvur that the father didn't pay me. So says the halacha now, because it's Teres Zman and the chazaka is like Reish Lakish that the person does not pay, so even though the guy's dead now, he doesn't have to come, and when he wants to collect now from the Yisomim, he doesn't have to take a shvur and say, I never got money from your father, because the assumption is he never got money from his father because it's Teres Zman even though the man is dead. That is the Gemara. As the Gemara says, even though the halacha is, we ordinarily say, one who wants to collect the debt from the assets of the Yisomim, lo yipara, shouldn't take money unless he takes a shvur that I never collected from the father. But here, chazaka lo yavid inish to part of the chazaka is a person does not pay early, and therefore, if he's going to collect from the Yisomim, he doesn't have to make even if he's collecting from the Yisomim, he doesn't have to take a shvur that he didn't get paid, because Mistame didn't get paid because it's b'teres man.
So why did you add the whole thing in that maybe you think before he died he wants to pay his debt? I think
I'm adding that just because of the afilu. What's the afilu? What's the even?
Afilu is that if you're coming to that from Yisomim, generally you need to take a shvur. Like the Gemara says, right?
Generally you have to take a shvur. Yeah, it's only if it's after Zman. Yeah, I guess the afilu is that you. Yeah.
From Yisomim,
yeah. So this chazaka is so strong that it undoes the shvur. Yeah. I'm just suggesting as far why it's an afilu. Maybe it's not as far. Just pulled it out of my hat. But maybe it's not as, I'm just suggesting as far why it's an afilu, why it's even more than, meaning why should the chazaka be less strong? Mm-hmm. So maybe because a person wants to clean up his debt before he passes away. Mm-hmm. This is something people do. Anyway, okay, so this is really a parenthesis, and the Gemara gets back to the discussion of comparing it to the Gemara, to the Mishnah as we did last week. But it's a very geshmaka kind of pilpul in this Tosafos here. And it gives us a good sense of what you might spend 2.5 months in yeshiva on. Not necessarily justified that it's 2.5 months, but it's something that you would do. Okay, so says the Tosafos. Nida, it would seem to me that here, when the Gemara asserts that you can collect the debt from the Yisayimim even without a shvua. B'terech zmanei, then it's talking about gedolim, it's talking about adults, where you can collect without taking a shvua. Av b'ktanim, when it comes to if the orphans are minors, then loy govi, you don't collect at all until they get older. So not the pshat that you can, it's two steps here. First of all, there's don't collect, and certainly not with it. Not even a shvua helps, right? So when it comes to gedolim, we take away step 2. You don't have to do the shvua, but you can still collect. And with Yisayimim, says Tosafos, you don't collect at all. Afilo teich manei, even though it's before the due date, and the assumption is the father did not pay, so it's a clean collection. There's no doubts to the loan. There's no doubts that the loan actually happened, that the money is owed, but nonetheless you still can't collect. So what for? So it's either one of 2 reasons. Okay, so let's look at the Gemara, the picture I sent you, the first 2 pictures I sent you, which is in the Gemara in Bava Basra. It's later in our Gemara. Kuf Ayin Daled Amud Aleph, and at the end in Amud Beis. So you can read it in English there. The Gemara relates that there was a certain guarantor for orphans whose father borrowed money and died, and the orphans were minors. So the guarantor repaid the debt to the creditor before informing the orphans that he was repaying the debt for them. Now, the guarantor now seeks to be reimbursed from the assets of the orphans because he just paid off the father's debt. Okay, so says Rav Papa. So now everybody agrees that until these children grow up, you can't collect the debt from them. The question is why? Why can't, this is a legit debt. This guarantor paid off a debt that's on their assets. So the Yisayimim will definitely have to pay one day, but not now while they're children. Why can't they pay while they're children? One of 2 reasons. Amar Papa said, repaying the creditors a mitzvah, Priyas Bal Chayv mitzvah. And therefore, Yisayimim are not, they're minors, and therefore not obligated to mitzvahs. So you can't compel them to pay yet, since it's a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is not on them yet. It's a mitzvah to repay, and they're not obligated to mitzvahs yet. That's reason number 1. Rav Huna says, Rav Huna Breder Yeshua said, because say perhaps the deceased gave bundles of money to his creditor before his death, and therefore some or all of the debt has been paid. So as long as they're minors, the heirs would not be aware of this payment, but upon reaching maturity, they're old enough, there's a chance they may examine their father's papers and discover that their father had done this, and therefore payment is deferred until they have reached maturity so that they can argue their case in court. So Rav Papa is saying it's a question of a mitzvah, and they're not obligated to pay, whereas Rabbi Shubal Levi is saying it's a technical thing, because they can't argue in court. They're not old enough to argue in court. Maybe their father did pay off, and the children don't know. So now let's think about this for a second. Tosafos just asserted that even if the father dies teres manei, you cannot collect the money from the children until they're older. Well, why not? Why can't you collect the children until they're older? Okay, so Rav Papa would say the reason is because it's a mitzvah to pay off a debt and is not obligated to mitzvahs yet. So that's clear. So according to Rav Papa, certainly you can't collect. But according to Rav Shubal Levi, what's the reason why you can't pay off the debt? What's the reason why you can't force the children to pay now if you wait till they're older? It's because maybe the father paid it off already, and the children need the chance to be able to go through their father's records and argue their case in court. But if it's teres manei, and the chazaka is that a father would not pay, then that reason falls away, and maybe they should be able to collect. So Tosafos' assertion that the Gemara's chazaka here goes even to a deceased a debtor is only like our Papa, because our Papa would say we have this cloud that protects the children, that they aren't claimed any money yet because it's a mitzvah and they're not obligated to mitzvahs yet.
Or it's only dead.
That's right, which is why it's limited to adults. So Tosafos' assertion that this statement is limited to adults because you cannot collect from children is clear according to our Papa, because it's a mitzvah to pay back and the children aren't obligated to mitzvahs yet, so you can't collect yet. But if the reason why you can't collect ordinarily from children is because we want them to get older to argue their case because maybe their father paid, we have a chazaka father doesn't pay early. Right? So it says Tosafos, So Lira Papa, so Abuktanim, again, like in minors, Loy Gava, you can't collect. Afilu Teich money, even if it's early. You cannot collect, even though it's a chazaka and the father did not pay, yet you still cannot collect from the children. Why? Lira Papa going to our Papa, the father's time, but he explains the reason, the reason why you don't bother children. So this is Allah we're going to get to soon, which is, there's a principle which is, Ein Liskakin Nisi Yisamim, Elim came Ribois Eichalai, I think that's the Lashon, which is, you don't collect, you don't help orphans pay off their debt while they're minors, unless it's an interest debt and they're losing money on the interest. Then you help them pay off their debt. Otherwise, wait till they're adults and let them fight their case. Let them fight their case on their own. They might find some records from their father or whatnot. So don't involve yourself in the debt of Yisraelim until such time that the children are adults, unless they happen to be losing money on that debt because it's with interest. So now there are puppet. This dispute between our papa and Rav Yeshua and Rav Huna bar, what is it? Rav Huna bar Shu bar Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua is explaining why it is you don't help the children pay off their debt unless there's an interest loan here. So Rav Papa said Mishom Priyas B'Choiv mitzvah, because paying back a debt is a mitzvah. The Yasmi and these minor Yisraelim are under bar mitzvah, lab mitzvah, not b'nei mi'avad mitzvah, not old enough to do mitzvahs yet. Okay, so certainly Rav Papa would agree that whether there's a even if we substantiate the chazakah that the father did not pay because it's Tois money, you still don't collect from the children because they're not obligated in mitzvahs to pay back yet. And when they're adults, then we'll go collect. Now he says further, even according to Rav Huna, and which is going to become the entire pilpul of the Tosafos, is to see where's Rav Huna stand. Would he say we collect from the children, or would he say not collect from the children? Teres money. After this man, Rav Huna would definitely say don't collect because maybe the father already paid off, and we want to wait for the children to get older to prove that. If it's after this man. But if it's Tois money, and the chazakah is that strong that a father wouldn't pay, then maybe we should collect from the Yisraelim, because it's such a strong chazakah that the father didn't pay off yet. According to Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua. So the entire pilpul of Tosafos going forward is going to be according to Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua, back and forth, whether or not Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua would say you collect from Yisraelim Tois money. Right? Achaz money. Definitely, Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua says don't collect because Mistama the father, because it's Shaykh the father paid off.
Well, everyone said according to
no, because if I have Eidim, not necessarily. If I have Eidim, if not necessarily, because the creditor will make a shvua and say I never got the money. And if he takes it, let's say it's achaz money, and it's adults. He comes to collect. There's no shtar. So how does he collect? He makes a shvua that I never collected the money, and then he gets paid.
The shvua can override the chazakah.
This is after achaz money.
Right.
So Toich money, he doesn't even need a shvua because for sure the father didn't pay.
No, but after money, there's still the chazakah that he was paid.
It's not chazakah he was paid after his money. It's not a chazakah a person pays on time. By character, Rish Lakish said the reason why we don't believe him when he says he paid Toich money is because halavai she put up his money. So it's not the pshat of this chazakah that he paid on time.
It's just that he doesn't pay early.
It's just he doesn't pay early, exactly. So ordinarily, the creditor, right? The creditor makes a shvua that I never took the money, and then he gets paid if it's achaz money. But if it's toich money, right? Then he doesn't need that shvua because the chazakah didn't pay early. But what if it's ketanim? Now the reason why ordinarily we don't collect from ketanim, says Rabbi Shubin Levi, is because maybe the father paid, but that maybe the father paid, even though it's very far fetched that the father paid. Right? Because otherwise we'd have some sort of receipt, some sort of paper. But maybe he did. And because of that maybe, we want the children to grow up to be able to argue that maybe in court. We want them to be able to argue that maybe in Bezdin. But now there is no such maybe the father paid on time. There is no such maybe the father paid because it's before his money. So if that's the case, maybe we should collect from children. If it's an issue of mitzvah, like our Papa said, so there's no mitzvah to pay because they're not named mitzvah in the new. They're not adults yet. They're not mechuyev mitzvahs. But if the issue is maybe the father put money away, well, we have a chazakah that the father didn't put money away. So go collect from Yisraelim Even if they're Tanim, Teres Money.
Because what are you waiting for when they get older? They're going to make an argument that is not.
Exactly.
Against
Exactly. If they make an argument, well, our father paid off, either bring a receipt or we throw your claim out because it's chazaka, your father doesn't pay early. And if the chazaka overrides that, then collect Teres Money. It's only Achaz Money that we don't collect right. It's only Achaz Money that we don't collect from Yisraelim, because maybe Yisraelim will claim my father paid on time. But if he hears before his money, so can you make that same claim? Maybe our father paid early, and that's why don't bother us until we're adults.
Based on his reasoning, when it said that when they get older, they're going to find evidence. They're going to look at his papers and their star that says he paid.
Even though it's a far-fetched thing, we still go with it. Because Lapoil, it's not fair to Ketanim who aren't capable of making an argument. So we have to go to the most extreme argument and say maybe that extreme argument exists, and let's wait for that. Which means the extreme argument that the father paid on time without informing us. But to say so extreme that he paid early, would I say that? And that's the question here. Is the chazaka of Reish Lakish so strong that it even it makes these case so extreme that even Rabbi Shua Chananya, Rabbi Bnei Rabbi Shua will agree that the chazaka they didn't pay early is so strong that you can even collect from your son. Yeah, following? Moshe, with me? Okay, so let's see, yeah? So let's go to Tosafos. It's a pilpul back and forth, but Tosafos is going to go to. Now, Afilu, Rav Huna ben Rabbi Shua, even according to Rav Huna ben Rabbi Shua, third line of the Tosafos, which explains the reason why ordinarily, which means achar zman, the reason why you don't collect from Yisraelim, Ketanim, is mishum tzardi, because maybe tzardi means a bundle. Maybe the father left a bundle, and somehow when the children are adults, they're going to prove it, and therefore lo yigov mi yasmin Ketanim. And therefore, you can't collect from the Yisraelim that are children, because maybe when they're adults, they're going to find some sort of proof that the father paid off already. Says Tosafos, nonetheless, you still cannot collect. You still can't collect early. Why can't I collect early? There's a chazaka that the father doesn't pay early. So why can't they collect early? Don't argue because maybe the father paid off. Reish Lakish outruled that chazaka. So the reason why we don't collect early now is for a new reason. We in the court are not allowed to accept testimony unless the litigant is present. And Ketanim and a minor it's as if he's not present. In the Basra, the Gemara proves in the Basra, which I didn't look up, so I don't know, but just taking Tosafos' word for it. So now Tosafos is saying another reason. Why can't you take money from Yisraelim while they're Ketanim, even though there's an absolute chazaka the father did not pay off, and that chazaka overrides every concern. Don't convince me that the father left money behind. If it's achaz money, maybe. Before his money, definitely not. So why can't I force collection of the assets from the assets of these children? Reason is because how is this guy going to prove that there's a loan? There's no star. He's going to bring Eidim. Now, Eidim are only accepted when there's litigant present, and its minor is not considered a present litigant. So it's a technical issue.
Can't prove the one with the club.
It's what do they say? You got him on a technical legality. It's a technical legality because we cannot accept even though we know that witnesses are saying the truth. But halacha is we can't accept the witnesses unless the litigant is present. And the litigant is not present because he's a minor. And therefore he cannot collect from the Yisraelim. Even though we know for sure that the father owes it, we know for sure it was not paid because of chazaka. Okay, so now we have a third reason not to collect from Yisraelim, which is interesting. It's a big kasha on Tosafos. I think the Wabachal in the Gemara mentioned this reason. This reason that you don't collect Eidim prior to them becoming Gdolim should apply to Rav and their Papa. Rav Huna and their Papa. So why is Rav Huna saying the reason why we don't collect from Yisraelim because maybe the father hit it and we want to wait for, maybe the father paid it off and we want to wait for the guy to grow up so you can argue the case. Just say the reason why we don't collect from time is because we don't accept Eidos.
Different there with the guarantor, right?
That's the case that point happens to be the case over here, but these reasonings of Rav Papa and Rav Huna ben Yeshua apply to the rule of Einis Fucking Lisanim Ketanim. We don't involve ourselves in the debt of the Ketanim unless there is a debt that's unless they're losing money on the debt because of interest. What's the reason why we don't take care of the Ktanim's debts? Answer, Papa versus Rav Huna. Why not answer? Because there's no edus. Unless Rav Papa and Rav Huna are talking about when there is a shtar. And that's why they're giving their reasons, when there is a shtar. Maybe that's the reason that they don't introduce this thing. Anyway, we have it. The bottom line is we have a third reason now to not collect from Ktanim alone. Reason number one is because it's a mitzvah, it's our papa, so we put that on the shelf because that's clear. Reason number two is Rav Huna ben Yeshua says maybe the father paid it off, but that only applies achaz manai. Reason number three is tayz manai, because there's no litigant, and therefore we can't collect edus. We can't accept edus because there's no litigant. It's reason number three. Now Tosafos goes back on this. Now, what happens if we circumvent this third reason? Now, afilo niskabel edus b'chayav. Now, what happens if the court already has edus that he owes him money from when the father was alive? So we already have that. So we don't need the litigant present, or the litigant was present before he died. So we don't need the Yisraelim present in order to force a collection of the debt. We've already accepted the edus, so we already have it established that there's a loan. So now, if that's the case, maybe now I should be able to collect Toyos Mane. I have a chazaka the father didn't pay off because it's Toyos Mane. And I have already edus in the presence of the litigant because the father was alive at the time of the edus. So I have a proven loan with edus and a chazaka that the guy didn't pay because it's Toyos Mane. Why not collect? Says the Tosafos. Now what he says now is not something he says I'm certain about. It seems the Tosafos is saying it's a possibility. But not that he's certain, because you're going to see that Raya doesn't prove it definitively. It only gives an opening to a possibility. Namely as follows. Matzos l'meimar, we might be able to say, the chashinu l'tzarri, we might be able to say that this concern of Rabbi Yeshua, that the father stashed away money, a bundle of money to pay off the loan, is not only for achaz mani, but afilu toyes mani, even be in this man. Why? The ketanim, dafke by children. So the svara I told you earlier, that the father, before the guy dies, wants to clean up his debt, says Tosafos, maybe that applies to ketanim, even if it doesn't apply to gedolim. And you'll see why he says that. It's not mamish from what I said, but you'll see.
After they inherit him?
Before he dies. Before he dies, he knows he's leaving behind little children, doesn't want to saddle them with debt. So before he dies, he's paying off, even though it's Toyos Mane. So this svara that Rav Huna said, Rav Yeshua says, that the reason why we don't collect from Yisraelim is because maybe the father paid it off and we want to wait for them to get older to make the case, which we said till now only applies achaz mane. Now Tosafos is saying maybe it applies Toyos Mane, but exclusively to ketanim, not for Yisraelim, not for gedolim. If his children are adults, he's not paying off early. He'll let them pay it off from the assets. But if they're minors, then he will pay it off early. Or maybe he will pay it off early, which is why we have to wait till they get old enough to argue that argument. Now, what's his raya that perhaps the father might do that? Because the Ashkechan, we find a similar din, Gabe Almana, with respect to a widow, the Perek HaSheleach, in Perek HaSheleach, in Masechta Gittin, where there it says, it's nan, Ein Almana Nefras, Michsi Yisraelim El B'Shvua. So we said before that B'chlal, anytime someone collects a debt from Yisraelim, he has to take a shvua, they never got paid. So the almana, the widow, she has to come collect the ksuba. Who did she get the ksuba from? From the assets of the Yisraelim. So she has to swear that the husband didn't pay me yet, that your father didn't give it to me yet. And it's possible that this almana is not these children's mother. Not necessarily, right? It could be anybody. Or it could be a stepson. So yes, she has to vow that her husband didn't give her anything, and then she can collect the ksuba from the assets. And the Gemara says the time of the reason is mishum shema itfisa bal tzarari, because maybe the husband left a bundle for her. Even though it's early, right? Because the debt of the ksuba is only, when's the man of ksuba? When he dies and when the divorce. So when would he have given her this money? Before he died. That's Toyos Mane. So the Gemara says there, and when it comes to an almana, because he cares for her, or at least maybe that's the assumption, he cares for her, so he'll give her money early. And therefore, when he dies and she wants to collect ksuba from the children, from the Yisraelim, she has to take a shvur that she didn't get anything because maybe she got it. So if that's the case, maybe the same thing applies to children. That before the guy dies, leaving young children with debt, even though it's Tay's money, maybe he'll be tzardi, maybe he'll give a bundle, so that the children aren't saddled with debt. And if that's the case, then the chazaka v'shlakish is off. And therefore you cannot collect from your son and Tanim Tay's money because maybe he paid early. And you got to wait till they're older and argue the case. So the collection of Tay's money without a shvur is limited to Gedolim. Because Tay's money for your son can't collect because maybe the father paid off early, just like he paid the almanas ksuba early. But Tay's now goes back. So this is the pilpul. Okay, so here we are, and at this point, we're arguing that even according to Yeshua and Rabbi Yeshua, you would not collect from your son if there's a debt to money, because maybe the father paid it off, just like he paid off the almana early. And this is even if there's aidim to prove the loan, because if no aidim to prove the loan, you certainly can't collect, because you have no litigant. If it's achas money, you certainly can't collect, because for sure maybe the father paid off. But if it's Torah's money, and there's aidim already from the time when the father was alive, so you don't need new aidis now. We still say don't collect from the Yisraelim, because maybe the father paid off early, just like he might pay off for his soon-to-be widow. But as a Tosafos, this is inconclusive. Why? Because me'almana ein raya. That's what I said before. Tosafos is not proving definitively, but he's leaving it open-ended. He's saying it could be one way, it could be the other way. Maybe we do compare Yisraelim Tanam Talmana, maybe we don't compare Yisraelim Tanam Talmana. At this point, he's comparing it. And the reason is, very simply, who wants to leave their, God forbid, people don't want to leave their wives with debt. Certainly don't want to leave little children with debt. You have children who are adults and have successful businesses, and you know that there's assets, and you know that they can handle it. Okay, so they end up with debt and they pay off on your assets. Not the worst thing. But little children, or a widow, no one wants to do that. Okay, so just like he'll pay off his wife, ksuba, so he might pay off the debt before he dies for his children. But says Tosafos, we can still split between almana and children. How so? However, we cannot bring a proof that just because he would do it for his wife doesn't mean he'll do it for his children. Why? The hasam over there, when it comes to almana, over there, we are worried that the husband may have paid it off early. May have left a bundle of cash early. Vafilu, even though his inheritors are adults. Why? Why would he pay off early even if they're adults? I just finished saying that the reason why he paid it off is because he has rachmanas. But if his children are adults and they have assets and how to handle it, it's okay. So let them handle it like every other debt. So why is he paying off early? And this is where we're going to split between Yisraelim and Almana. Mishum, the Isle B'Tnai Bezdin. Because ksuba, the paying of ksuba is a chayv of Bezdin. And because it's an absolute chayv of Bezdin, therefore he wants to take care of his, he's more incentivized to pay it off because it's a Tnai Bezdin. Now, where did we see that Tnai Bezdin, someone's more likely to pay off a Tnai Bezdin than a regular loan, than a regular chiyuv? So explains the Gemara, explains because we see in the Gemara in Perek and Ksubas, the Chayshin on Tfeilit Zarari, mi babas ishtai. So in the Ksuba, a person is obliged to, B'Tnai Bezdin, he's obliged to take care of his daughters until they get married from his assets, even if he, God forbid, even if he passes away early. But Lav Dafka is he obligated to pay for his wife's daughters if they come from a previous marriage, his stepdaughters. But let's say, in an effort to appease his wife when he gets married to her, he adds in the Ksuba that I'm going to take care of your daughters as well. So you marry me, I'm going to take care of your daughters too. So one of these two, his own daughters is Mitanai Bezdin, it's Mitanai Ksuba, and the other one, his stepdaughters, is only a loan that he's taken upon himself. And there, the Gemara Ksuba splits between these two and says that when it comes to his own daughters, we do suspect that the father put it away. Because it's his own daughters, Mishum the Kiva the Istabah Tnai Bezdin. But not because it's his own daughters, but because it's Tnai Bezdin that it's in the Ksuba is incumbent. So Imur, we say over there that Sarari Atafsinu, that there's a bundle he left behind and they have that already. And therefore they have to swear before they collect. And therefore, when it comes to his children, and when it comes to a halva alone, it's not Tanai Bezdin. So in other words, Tosafos is saying like this. Instead of looking at it as who is benefiting from him paying off early, and in which case you might compare the widow to the children, you have to ask yourself, from where is this chiyuv coming? If the chiyuv is coming because he took it upon himself, then it's not, he doesn't feel so pressured to pay it. He took it upon himself, and whatever, it will or won't. But if it's a chiyuv that comes from Bezdin, then he feels compelled to pay early. And therefore, Almana and his own daughters, we are worried that he paid early. Whereas Yisrael Tanim and his stepdaughters, we maybe he didn't pay early. Not after you pay early because it's not tonight Bezdin.
So Yisrael Tanim, it's not paying them, it's paying a debt to a third person that they would benefit from that.
Yeah, exactly. But Tosafos doesn't say that this is conclusive. He says just ein raya. He said from almana it's ein raya because you could split. I mean, Tosafos is going both ways. Maybe it's like an almana, and the reason why he put away money for his own daughters and for an almana is because he's close to them. And if that's why he's doing it, they'll put it for his own little children too. But it may be the reason why he's putting it away for his wife, or he's paying early for his wife and for his daughters is because it's Tanai Ksuba, and his stepdaughters and his children or the halva is not Tanai Bezdin. So Tosafos is left inconclusive. So now because Tosafos is inconclusive, now Tosafos is going to raise two possible resolutions to this inconclusive situation, which is the state we're at is, according to Rabbi Yeshua, this is the ambiguity right now. According to Rabbi Yeshua, where we know there's a loan, you've already accepted Eidos before the father died. It's Teres money, and then for Chazaka, the guy didn't pay. Right? But nonetheless, maybe because they're little children, he would put money away anyway, because he doesn't want them to be saddled with the debt. Or, no, the Chazaka is you never pay early, and therefore don't collect from the Yisrael Ketana. This is where he's at. In that papa, you definitely don't collect from the Yisrael Ketana, because they're not obligated in mitzvahs. But Rabbi Yeshua, which says the reason why Achaz Mana you don't collect from children is because maybe the children are going to claim my father paid early. Well, if my father would pay early for Ketanim, then you have to. If my father would pay early Teich money for Ketanim, then you can't collect Teich money for Ketanim either. Or maybe the Chazak is so strong that he won't pay early unless it happens to be Tanai Ksuba or Tanai Bezdin. That's not Tanai Bezdin. So this is the conundrum we're at. When we have no need for Edom, can you still collect when you have no need for Edom and you're holding it Rishon Levi or whenever you're Yeshua? Can you collect from your son and Ketana? Teres money. From Gedolim, definitely you can collect Teres money because the Chazaka, the father didn't pay. But Ketana, maybe the father did pay. This is where we're at. So Tosafos is now going to propose possible rayas and then reject them. So here's the first one. Ein lavi raya. Don't bring a raya, Mishalihi de Mechiltin. That which the Gemara is going to say later, Kuf Ein Daladam Beis, which is the Gemara we saw earlier, between a papa and Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua. A papa said the reason why you don't collect from children until they get older is because it's a mitzvah and they're not obligated in mitzvahs yet. Sorry? Did I? Oh yeah, sorry, I skipped to the second proposed raya. Yeah, my apologies. Okay, back up. The Imam raya. Right, first Tosafos brings a possible raya from our Gemara, and then brings a possible raya from the Gemara in Kufayin Dalet. So here's the possible raya from our Gemara. From the fact that the Gemara did not say here, right? The Gemara here said that the halacha follows like Rish Lakish, even for your Simon, notwithstanding the fact that ordinarily if Mikdash Shvuah, now you don't because the Chazak is so strong. So Tosafos asks, well, why not say, even though ordinarily you don't involve yourself in the loans of Ketanim, here we will because it's B'tayich Manim. That's a bigger even, is it not? Because in in the right, there's two stages: pay with collect. A, B, collect with shvur. So which one are we negating here? Ordinarily, he collects with shvur, but over here he collects without shvur. Now, if you're collecting from ketanim, then it's both evens, not shvur, and you're collecting, because from ketanim you never collect. So if Taka, you're allowed to collect from ketanim, like Rabbi Shua, like if we're going to learn that Rabbi Shua will agree that you may collect from ketanim early. Why? Because a person never pays his debt early. So why not say that? And when it comes to Yisomim, you can still collect early, even though ordinarily you never collect from ketanim. It's a much bigger even than saying even collect from adults without a shvua. Because when it comes to collecting from children, you're negating side the fact that you're not doing a shvua, and you're side negating the fact that you don't usually collect. It's a bigger aflagav. So if the Gemara didn't bring that, it's because ketanim you can't collect. Maybe that's the raya. Following? It's very geshmak raya. It's almost so obvious. But the text is going to give an obvious rejection too. So let's first see in Tosafos. Don't bring a raya. Don't, from the fact that the Gemara does not say you may collect from Yisomim when it's Tois Mane, even though ordinarily you do not collect from Ketanim unless the interest is taking away, making them lose money. And that's going to be your raya, the loy mara b'ketanim, from the fact that the Gemara doesn't say that, means the Gemara statement which is exclusive to Gedolim. And only by Gedolim you can collect early. But by Ketanim you may not collect early, because if you could collect early, the Gemara would have said, Afagad the Enes Kokin. That the Gemara statement is limited to Gedolim. Because if it was open to collecting early for Ketanim, we would have said so. Because that's a much bigger chiddush than collecting from Gedolim without a shvua. Collecting from Gedolim without a shvua is less of a chiddush than collecting b'chlaf from Ketanim, which ordinarily you never collect at all. And that would have been a much greater chiddush. Just seeing this is a raya that you may collect. Yeah, you with me? You see, your gears are turning.
Settling, but
I guess I don't want to go to the next thing till we have this settled. Yeah, it's clear. So says the Gemara, says Tosafos, no, Shema maybe the reason why it only quoted the idea of Gedolim that you collect that of Shvua is Mishum Rav Papa knock at Milsa Gedolim, because of Rav Papa. Had the Gemara said Afagav the Enes Gokin, that would be contrary to Rav Papa's din. Because Rav Papa says you never collect from Ketanim. Why do you never collect from Ketanim? Because it's a mitzvah to pay back, and they're not mechuyev in mitzvahs yet. Chazaka shmazaka, who cares? They're not obligated in mitzvahs.
Isn't that not what we're looking at?
We're looking at Rabbi Shua. The whole pilpul is according to Rabbi Shua.
Exactly.
So Tosafos says, don't get lost in my pilpul. Remember, there's another view here. Right? There's another view here. And the Gemara wants it to work according to all views.
Yeah.
Had the Gemara made the bigger chiddush, the bigger chiddush only works according to Rabbi Shua. But it wouldn't have worked according to Papa, because our Papa would say, whether you have chazaka or no chazaka, you can't collect from children because it's the mitzvah. So therefore, it's not the pshat that it's exclusively for Gedolim and not for Ketanim, but Ketanim you may take early. No, it's the pshat that because according to one opinion you can never collect from Ketanim, therefore we're going to go to the universal statement here. Even though there's another view, Rabbi Shua which says you may collect from Ketanim early.
According to that, then the Gemara just, if we're going to say that, then the Gemara is just not in line with Rabbi's opinion.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. In other words, what you're saying, tell me forget what you're saying. Tell me if I understand what you're saying. What you're saying is, this should be a raya if the Gemara objects to Rabbi Shua. Because if the Gemara was like Rabbi Shua, it would have gone with the bigger chiddush. Yeah, good kasha. No. But it gives another answer anyway. Maybe that's why it gives the other answer. Another answer. Nakatahu, he took this one. Dal Bali Para, he took the principle of that ordinarily you collect from Yisomim with a shvua. And here, because it's chazaka, you don't have to do the shvua. Lashmun to teach, the Gav Afil believe shvua. that you can collect even that Shvua. So Tosafos is basically saying that there is an option to say that collecting without a Shvua is as big as a Chiddush as collecting from Tanim. And just for the Chiddush of Shvua, let's put it this way. Had the Gemara said, Afagav, the Ein Iskakim, implying that you can collect from Tanim, maybe I would think you collect with a Shvua. Because there's two issues here, right? Does the Chazaka make you forgo the Shvua? Or does the Chazaka make you forgo the fact that ordinarily you don't collect? So when it comes to adults, you collect always. But if it's Achaz Mane Shvua, the Chazaka says without Shvua. Because a person would never pay Teres Mane. When it comes to Ketanim, ordinarily you never collect early. Right? Ordinarily you never collect from Ketanim. Because maybe the father put money away, according to Puna B'Div Yeshua. But because it's Teres Mane, the father didn't put money away, collect. But do so with a Shvua. That's what you would have thought. So therefore, says Tosafos, the Gemara takes the other way. Now, my klotz kasha is, why did the Gemara say both? Gemara could have said both. Afagav the Amar Mara Bal Department say send the Parel B'Shvua. Va'afagav the in the Skokim Li Semitanim, unless it's a Ribus Echelas. Why not say both? Is there a problem to say both? So it seems like you need a combination of both answers. Because it has to work out, first of all, to Rav Papa. Otherwise, like you said, the Gemara would be clearly rejecting one opinion over the other. And at the same time, the Gemara has to have, so in other words, the Gemara's solution is to come up with a universal Chiddush. And the universal Chiddush is you don't have to take a Shvua. Everybody agrees that's a Chiddush. Whether there's another Chiddush of Shvua, maybe, but it's not the issue right now. So maybe that's the Gemara's compromise, Kilu, that's trying to come up with a universal Chiddush. Afshir. Moshe, with me, what do you say? Not following? Or nothing to say?
No, I missed part of the class.
Oh, I missed. Oh, okay, so they'll go back in the recording. Okay, next proposed raya, and then we'll stop with that. Okay, so we're back to square one, according to Rabbi Yeshua, which says that if the loan is achaz manai, you don't collect from the Yisayim Ktanim, because we want them to get old enough to be able to argue maybe our father paid it off already. Do we say the same thing? Which teres manai? That a father might pay off a debt early just so he doesn't saddle his young children with a debt? Or do we say the chazaka v'shlokish, that a person never is really so strong that even outlives that? So we're still in that conundrum, unresolved issue. So now Tosafos wants to bring another proposed raya. Maybe you're going to say a raya from the Gemara, Daf Kufa and Dalet, which is the Gemara we quoted earlier. Now, over there, the Gemara quotes Rav Papa's reason and Rav Hona B'Div Yeshua's reason for why you don't collect from Yisayim Achaz Manai. Rav Papa says because it's a mitzvah, and children are not obligated in mitzvahs. Rav Hona says because maybe the father put money away. We want to wait them to be old enough to be able to argue their case. And the Gemara gives two ikabanayos. So let's look at the second picture that I sent today, and you'll see the two ikabanayos. So you can see it's on 174b. You can find Aldim and Bays. So Gemara asks, what's the difference between the opinions of Rav Papa and the bad of Rav Huna? As both agree that the orphans are exempt from repaying the debt until they reach majority. So it says the Gemara, Ikabanayu, two cases. The difference between them is where the one who owed the money, i.e. the deceased, admits explicitly just before his death that he's not yet repaid any of his loans. So according to Rav Papa, with the reason why Yosim, you don't collect from Yisayim Tanim, it's because it's a mitzvah and they're not obligated to mitzvahs. Well, even if we know explicitly that the father didn't pay it back, because the second before he died, he said, I have this loan, please take care of it. So we know explicitly that he still has the debt. We still don't make the Ktanim pay because it's a mitzvah. And they're not obligated to mitzvahs yet. According to Rabbi Yeshua, and the only reason why we're preventing the Ktanim from paying right away is because we want them to wait old enough to argue maybe your father paid it off. We know your father didn't pay it off. Out. Another answer the Gemara gives, alternatively, where the court excommunicated the deceased for not cooperating with the court in repaying his debt, and he died while still in state of excommunication, which obviously means he didn't pay back yet. Because if he would have paid back, his excommunication would have been lifted. So according to Rav Papa, with the reason why you're not collecting from Yisayim is because it's a mitzvah, right, the same thing. We still don't collect from Yisayim, even though we know for sure the father didn't pay, because they're not obligated mitzvahs. If you're following Rabbi Yeshua, And the reason why we're not collecting from Yisraelim ordinarily is because you want to wait them to be old enough to argue. Maybe your father paid back. We know your father didn't pay back because he was in excommunication. Now it says Tosafos, why not bring another Ike Benayu? And the Gemara does not say Ike Benayu going to mace loy teretz money. Why not? Why didn't the Gemara say here's another distinction between Rav Huna and Rav Papa? If the father died before this money, according to Rav Papa, you don't pay back, it's a mitzvah. You don't pay yet, it's a mitzvah. According to Rav Huna, you do pay back. Why do you pay back? Because it's a chazaka, the father didn't pay early. Why didn't the Gemara say that? As the charai that Rav Huna ben Yeshua says that maybe the father did pay. And that's your raya. Let's see how Tosafos plays it out. The Gemara does not say Ike Benayu that another possible distinction between Rav Huna and Rav Papa is going to mayis loiva teichas man. If the loiva, the debtor, died early, the lid Rav Huna, according to Rav Huna, gavi, you should collect. According to Rav Papa, you don't collect because it's a mitzvah. And the mitzvah, they're not obligated to mitzvahs yet. But according to Rav Huna, you should collect. And in fact, the Gemara didn't say that as a raya, you don't collect, even if it's teichas money. Which means maybe the father did pay back taka early. And the father paying back to make sure children aren't saddled with debt may still override the chazaka that doesn't pay back early. Because if it didn't override the chazaka, then we would say that that's another reason, that's another distinction, where Rav Huna would say you do collect from the Yisraelim. Because the father definitely didn't pay back. Says Tosafos, this can't be a raya. Why? This is such a pasha to answer that it took me a few seconds in our meeting. I was like, what are you talking about? Then it clicked in my head, it's so obvious. That Rav Huna and Rav Papa Amar B'Shmaitim. Rav Huna and Rav Papa in our Gemara said, the less l'chazaka the Reish Lakish. They disagree with Reish Lakish. Look at the Gemara just before the Reish Lakish. The Gemara says, Rav Papa and Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua, of the Kabaya and Rava. Rav Huna and Rav Papa, B'chlal don't agree with Reish Lakish. They're B'chlal the opinion of Abai and Rava, that a person might pay back early.
So the whole discussion you just had is like.
So isn't the whole discussion now mute?
Yeah.
So the answer is no. Because even if Rav Huna and Rav Papa themselves don't care for this discussion, but we who paskin like Reish Lakish and are paskin like Rav Huna or Rav Papa, we have to reconcile the two. So even if Rav Huna ben Yeshua would say, look, I don't care for your old pilpul because in my view, a person might pay back early and therefore there is no such thing as a chazaka. But we paskin like Reish Lakish that there is a chazaka person that pay back early. And we paskin that you don't collect from a child, from Katanim, for one of these two reasons. So you got to reconcile your view, even if Rav Huna ben Yeshua himself doesn't have to defend this position. That's what we must say. Otherwise, this whole Tosafos seems completely obsolete. I'm looking at like, what is he talking about? Rav Huna rejected the chazaka Reish Lakish. Where did they reject it? And then I see the word b'shmaitin in our Gemara. Look up our Gemara. They rejected the whole thing. Okay. So that's why the Ike Benayu wasn't raised in the Gemara there. But Be'etzim, according to us, it might be an Ike Benayu. In other words, we who pass like Reish Lakish, and we pass that you don't collect from Tanam either for one of these two reasons, maybe this is a third Ike Benayu. Just not for them themselves, because they reject the whole chazak to begin with. That's rejection number one. Va'oid, number two, Bekam Mokemes, there's a number of places in the Gemara. The Gemara has a machlekes, and the Gemara asks, what's the distinction between the two opinions? And the Gemara gives reasons. What the Gemara gives scenarios that would be distinguished between one reason and the other. And the Gemara only says one of them, or time, or two of them. Respect to the dispute in Tanoim about whether or not you evaluate an ox. I didn't look at the whole Gemara, but it's about evaluating an ox that gores. And the Gemara there says Ike Benayu, and Tosafos over there says that the Gemara could have given other Ike Benayu, but the Gemara didn't care to, because as long as it gave one. So meaning maybe the Gemara could have given another Ike Benayu, but we don't need it. Okay, we'll stop over here. Next week we'll continue. Tosafos is going to bring now another raya.
What was that last point though?
To say that we want to bring a raya that Rav Huna ben Yeshua says Rav Huna ben Yeshua says you cannot collect early, because if you would say You're allowed to collect early, and that would be a distinction between their papa and Rabbi Shiur. If the father died early, that should be another distinction. If papa says don't collect because it's a mitzvah and you don't have to pay back it. If Huna says there's a chazaka that the father didn't pay, so want to collect. And in fact, the Gemara didn't bring that as a ikabanayun. It means if Rabbi Shiur agrees, you don't collect. So says, first of all, if Rabbi Shiur doesn't care for this chazaka, that's aleph. Number two, oftentimes the Gemara will bring one or two ikabanayus and ignore the fact that there might be others.
Okay, it just needs to prove it. The Gemara just needs to prove its point. It doesn't need.
It doesn't need to give every single possible ikabanayun. And Tosafos cites to a Gemara in where is it? In Bava Kama, where there the Gemara Taka brings one ikabanayun, and Tosafos their comments the Gemara could have brought other ikabanayus and brings other ikabanayus the Gemara could have brought, and the Gemara didn't bother itself with it. So we'll stop over here, and Mishnah will continue Tosafos next week. It's a very good Tosafos. This is a classic Tosafos. When they sit and break their heads in Tosafos for 3 months, this is what they're doing. Okay, good night.